Hey, Juventini, welcome back to the all JuveCast channel. This is episode 123 coming at you with Travis joining me, making his debut on the pod. And man, it's funny. We were booking this one in hopes, if you remember what you said to me in that message, in hopes of some goals and
Right.
celebrating the victory. And unfortunately, yeah, that was not the case, but it's awesome to have you on nonetheless. Travis, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. And, glad we can put this together, even though it's late for both of us a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's good. We were able to make it work, and yeah, a little tradition around is hearing the story of how guests became Juventini, and I'd love you to take a few minutes and share with everybody. Yeah, why Juve for you?
So mine's not that exciting of a story. My family is actually from Turin. I'm second generation Italian American, but I think probably what really solidified it was when I was a kid. We grew up playing the game. So we would play, FIFA and things like that. My dad would bring us little trinkets back from Italy because he traveled there periodically from work, and it was always like, something from Juve and something from another team. And as the oldest, I would always grab the Juve thing. So when me and my little brother would play, it would always be I was Juve, he was whoever else was brought home. And so I got attached to it. And as I got older and, the familial thing, being attached to like the area and things like that became more ingrained, it really just kind of stuck. And then all my favorite players have played there. So it's just been kind of one of those things where it's been a continuous part of my life for, as long as I can remember. And before, even like the video game thing was really big, like they didn't even put all the teams in the games, but Juve was always one of the teams. So that's always who I was. It's always been the club. And as I got older and there was other clubs, there's no talking me out of it. So
That's
here we
awesome,
are.
man. There you go. And here we are tonight, late in the evening, discussing what should have been a victory, but not so much. We end up with another draw, and it was 1-1. Goals from Morata and then Letizia for Benevento. And yeah, frustrating Saturday, to say the least, for Juventini, because social media became a little bit of a battleground, which we will get into. I'm sure we're going to touch on all the topics. But yeah, leading up to this one of the stories was, of course, Juve was going to be resting Cristiano Ronaldo. And not only was he going to rest, not play, but he's not even going to travel with the club. And this had some fans kind of on both sides of the fence here saying, yeah, no, that's good, rest him. But at the same token, you had a lot of fans that were, number one, weary because, yes, in theory, we should beat Benevento without him. However, this team hasn't exactly had momentum going in their favor. And if you look at the Champions League, we've got Champions League sealed up as far as a knockout round goes. It's going to take a hell of a lot to get that top spot because it's going to take a hell of a victory at Camp Nou there. But yeah, so you had fans on both sides of the spectrum. Obviously, after this match, it was put forth that he actually has some type of knock and they didn't want to risk it. And that's the reason. That makes a hell of a lot more sense than just we're resting you, you're not traveling. Even though
Right.
he's done that historically with Madrid, and we know Lionel Messi does that same thing. But yeah, not surprised that we could have used a few minutes out of him in this one, And how were you feeling? What side of the fence were you on when it came to Ronaldo resting?
My initial thought was, and I would probably like live and die by this even after the result, is this isn't the type of fixture where we should need him. We're talking about a bottom of the table side with a fairly leaky defense. I mean, Inzaghi is a good coach. He's kind of been up and down in terms of like teams and things like that. They did give us, some problems last year, but this is, this is the type of game where you win a championship. This isn't the type of game you drop points, but it's also not the type of game where you would need a Cristiano Ronaldo type player. So I don't take any grievance with leaving him back, because as you said, we've seen, players like Messi and Ronaldo not traveling with clubs before against this type of opponent. I think it begs more questions of what is going on with the players that we have, that we couldn't get this type of fixture over the line without him. Because if he is carrying a small knock and we did choose to travel him and we put him on, in the last 20, 25 minutes to try to really carry it over the line, could we aggravate that and make it worse? Is it even worth it at that point? So yeah, no problems with not traveling him. But again, I think there was no, if we would have won like at a canter, and as you said, as I said, even when we initially talked about this, like this should have been a goal fiesta for us, theoretically. If we would have won, 3-1, 4-1, anything like that, this wouldn't even be a question. But the fact that we drew, and in the fashion that we drew, he's always going to come in to question as that type of player, as the player he is, who is known for breaking a deadlock and cracking a tie open.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, and again, if we take away the knock, which none of us knew about at the time, just that he was being rested and not traveling, I still said, like, just keep him available and brought with the club just in case. Because had he had not got a knock and we didn't have any of that info at the time, I would have said what I was saying. You have Dybala, Morata, and you have nobody else up front other than wingers or whatnot, and it would be a little bit awkward in Pirlo's setup. Like we've seen Kulusevski up there, and Kulusevski's still hit and miss. But Chiesa's a winger, Bernardeschi's a winger. Like it's kind of awkward there, right? And you're thinking, man, I hope, pray to God, one of those guys doesn't get injured, because it's going to get really awkward without Dybala or Morata and pulling one of those guys in there. But not only that, he's one of the leaders on the club. So with the way the team's been playing, and just how shaky it is given the personnel that's on the pitch, changing from match to match, I thought it'd be good to have him even just there rearing the guys on. And I know that some people are like, well, it's Benevento, you shouldn't have to do that. But as a leader, as one of the leaders of the club, which he is, he naturally assumes a position of leadership, no matter what club he's on, given his abilities and whatnot. It's going to happen naturally. But yeah, I thought for that even alone, it would have been worth having him out there should we need, because honestly, I wasn't really surprised. I wasn't surprised that we could have used his services. It's just, it's a shame. We get to the lineups. Let's get to the lineups in this one. So you have Szczesny in goal. You have Cuadrado, Danilo, De Ligt, and Frabota across the back. Then you had Ramsey, Rabiot, Arthur, and Chiesa across the middle with Dybala, Morata up top. First thing that struck out to me was, is it actually going to play this way? And are we going to be using Ramsey as an outside midfielder? Because that's awkward as hell. Other than that, I honestly had no issues with the lineup. But I was kind of looking at that thinking, why is that happening? It couldn't possibly play that way. Ramsey will probably play in the hole. And then it's still kind of strange, because then we're going to be doing like a 4-3-1-2, which Pirlo really hasn't done. So it's kind of a weird one. What were you thinking when you saw the lineup, Strauss?
I had some question marks, because this didn't seem like a 4-4-2, and that was where my head initially went, with kind of a look to how Morata and Dybala played off each other the first time Morata was at Juve, with Dybala as more of a second striker, more roaming. But on either flank, who is playing outside? As you said, Ramsey is not going to be a true winger. So that didn't make a ton of sense to me. I would have felt better with utilizing a more natural 4-3-3, or if you're going to use a formation or a personnel like that, something that makes a little bit more sense in terms of fitting into like a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-2-1 in like a Christmas tree where you have the personnel. You're leaving one side really open to to counterattacks, which probably, I think we can arguably say, ended up being our demise. I don't think it was the ideal selection squad wise. But I will kind of default to, if we're going to give everybody from midfield up the capacity to roam, you also have to have the discipline to come back and do your defensive duties and fill that shape back in on the defensive side of things. And one thing, which I know I sent to you not too long ago, was Pirlo's thesis, where he quite frequently talks about, we're going to basically play a fluid formation where the offensive phase and the defensive phase are different formations. There's just no buy-in on the defensive phase right now, or on the offensive phase, people are too free to roam, which leaves us caught out. So I would have gone with a different selection, something that would have been a little bit more traditional in some of the molds of different formations, maybe a little different personnel. But I think what it really comes down to is you have to expect these guys as professionals to play both ways. You can't expect, De Ligt and Danilo to be left on an island by themselves at the back and need to come back and support them and to be successful, especially when you're not putting the ball in the back of the net. And again, this goes back to the point I made originally. If we were 3-1 up and we're just, cycling possession, yeah, that makes more sense. But if you lose possession and no one's coming back to fill in that formation, yeah, then it makes absolutely no sense. It's completely disjointed, and it's a little bit.
Yeah, and that's exactly what ended up happening. And that's one of the criticisms that Pirlo's been hit with, is this fluid type football that he wants to do, and changing formations from offense to defense is, I think he's just got to keep it simple and get back to basics. And, this it's too much. Like, so in this match, you had Fraboten Quadrado, who still pressed, continued forward. You had Ramsey that essentially played up high in the line with Morata and Dybala. Dybala was Roman, so Ramsey was, anytime it needed to come down to the defensive phase, Ramsey was nowhere near that position he needs to be in the defensive phase of a 4-4-2, because, again, of this fluidity Pirlo's looking for. It just creates awkwardness. Line them up, put them in their true positions, and play it out. There's way too much, like, it's not working, and we've seen this a number of times. He had a little bit of a success there in a straight 4-4-2, using traditional guys on the outside that could do it, and he went away from it both matches after. And it's just like, man, if you see something that's working good, like, go to it. This thing today, with Benevento, it was a mess. De Ligt and Danilo were left high and dry. The two midfielders, Arthur and Rabiot, were left to dry the entire match. It was an absolute mess, and it shouldn't be happening, especially against a club like Benevento. It's shocking, but the signs are all there. We can all see this, and my frustration with Pirlo is that it keeps happening. Like this belief he has in this fluidity, whatnot, hasn't given him enough signs to be this stubborn with it, in my personal opinion. Like I haven't seen enough good out of that. And honestly, the good I have seen is when it's been kept a little more basic. Like originally in our opening match, what it played out as a 3-5-2, and it was a lot more solid because guys were more true to their position. Against Cagliari, there was a great match. It was a straight 4-4-2 with the outsides pushing up, but holding that zone. And yeah, this was just, it was a mess. It was probably as bad, if not worse, than the Roma match, where we saw the same thing. We were just getting chewed up on counters, counter after counter after counter, because guys were all over the place positionally. We could go through the highlights here. There's not a lot in this one, so we'll get to the topics and the ratings and stuff right away. But 7th minute in, and Quadrado with a very questionable chest that Szczesny looked way too calm about. I think Lapadula was coming in there, sliding in there, and I'm like, wow, is this how we're going to play this game? Like, is this a warning sign of how nonchalant we're going to be? 20th minute, and man, what a ball from Federico Chiesa. Freddie Church, as he's starting to be known as. And man, Morata settles that down, wins his 1v1, very nice. And then a hell of a finish, far post. Very nice goal, promising start. Let's keep it rolling. 25th minute. No idea. Actually, I do have an idea, because when it rains, it pours. But Dybala not finishing this great run. Multiple passes, tic-tac-toe. He won twos with Morata. He won twos with Ramsey. Oh, man. So unfortunate to not finish that, but that's the way it's going for the guy right now.
Right.
It's tough. That one should have been in the net, no question. And 9 times out of 10, the ball is burying that. But because of how things are, yeah, he's in his own head right now. 34th minute, and Benevento almost draws level from Lapadula on a header that just goes wide. And yeah, I mean, throughout this half, they're just, like I said, Benevento they got multiple counterattacks, and they looked dangerous on all of them. Like we left our guys high and dry at the back there. 47th minute, Szczesny makes a great save. Arthur gets caught napping in our area there, and then does a terrible job of staying in front of his man. And De Ligt is immediately up after Szczesny makes a save. Szczesny's up, yelling and letting them have it, and that's good. I need to see that, because that's just piss poor. And then the following sequence, Arthur again teased this one up for Letizia. Like, I'm not even sure. It was like he was caught between minds of like clearing it or trying to do like a little pass to somebody like over the top of that defender. I think Dybala was on the other side of that defender, but he just got it all wrong and laid it up for Letizia, who actually did well to find back post there. And then we go out to this half 1-1. And man, I just remember thinking at half, like, it's way too slow from our point. Defensively, we were just so fragile, and we were leaving our guys high and dry. Positionally, it was awful. And the turnovers, the poor passing that we were showing from so many guys. And yeah, like, it was just frustrating. It was frustrating to see that we had probably half of our lineup look abysmal, man. What were your thoughts at halftime, Travis?
Well, a couple things I've been thinking for certain lately is I've been skeptical about the Arthur transfer since the beginning. And it's not a lack of quality, but every time I see him, or almost every time I see him come out, it's clear that he's quality, a really talented player. But in this system, where precisely does he fit? We're trying to shoehorn him into different places, and sometimes things that are extremely unnatural for him. He's excellent controlling the ball. He's excellent with the ball under his feet. It's hard to be knocked off the ball. He doesn't have the range of passing to be a deep lying playmaker. He doesn't have the size to do it. He doesn't have the strength to do it. So, when he gets caught in a confusing situation, like a couple of times, it was, to me, I'm having flashbacks of Jose Cancelo playing right back, somebody who is clearly learning something new in a way. So I don't have a ton of confidence in him at this point. Like, I think he's a quality player, but when he gets sent out, I get a little bit confused as to exactly what he is going to do and how he's going to be played. Dybala, I want to know what the problem is at this point.
Yeah.
We know exactly what he's capable of. We know what we bought him for. We've seen what he can do. If it's, something that I've talked about, a number of times is, maybe he just feels hard done by at the club, and his heart's not there anymore, because he's been touted as this like new, Del Piero type player. We're going to build a project around you, and is constantly benched, constantly played out of position, constantly asked to move around. And he's just like, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to show up, and I'm not consistent. I mean, Allegri even called him an aerobic player, somebody who thrives off of minutes. We look disjointed, and we look like we lack confidence. And a couple of things that we've touched on previously is we lack a leader in a lot of places. Like, somebody needs to step up, and we need to get back to playing people exactly perhaps where they're meant to be played, get a little bit of consistency, and not be as ambitious with being perhaps, like, as a knock on Pirlo, trying to reinvent the wheel of management, trying to be like another Pep Guardiola and coming out with like another style of play. So I was disappointed, because I would have thought, even with the personnel out there, you would have at least gone in 1-0 up at the half. And you can't be, chasing these guys back and forth like it's the Premier League the entire game or for an entire half. Juventus has constantly been and perennially been a defense first team. Somebody who's been perennially accused of, catenaccio, defense first type of playing. Where has that gone? Because there was a time, and even with Allegri, when it was probably, most complained about, where we would, sit on a 1-0 or something like that. We weren't bleeding goals. There weren't tons of counterattacks. Like, where have we gone wrong in that regard? And why can't we settle that for one half? Why can't we have that concentration for 45 minutes, let alone an hour? So, yeah, fully disappointed with the first 45 minutes. We need to sharpen up, I think, is probably the crux of it.
Man, you touched on so much in that, and I know we're going to get to all of it come the end of these highlights. And honestly, the second half didn't bring much, man. Benevento almost scores off a brutal Morata giveaway, like to kick off the second half. Terrible pass by Morata back, and they go up, and the shot ends up just going wide far post. Honestly, not much in there for Juve. 61st minute, Morata goes just wide with a shot from probably about 25 out. I mean, I think he had another opportunity with a header that I don't know how he doesn't bury. He's right in front of goal. He goes wide with it. 62nd minute, Benta and Shevsky come in. Arthur and Ramsey will go out. And in the 69th, Bernardeschi comes in. Chiesa goes out. And I'm pretty sure it was Bernardeschi that drove the byline and got that ball through for Morata. I could be mistaken, but it was a huge, huge chance. And I'm thinking we got to bury it. Bernardeschi does well again in the 85th, gets deep, beats his guy. Slots one across the area, and Dybala just, again, it's just not falling for him. The keeper makes a save there. It looked like he didn't quite get all of it. His shooting is so off. It's insane because, that's the one thing that really stands out, because in this match, I watched it twice, and the first time I chewed him up, but the second time when I watched it, I took the emotions out of it. That was Dybala's best so far this season. It's still not to standard of what we know he's capable of. It's still not to Juve standards. It shouldn't be Juve standards. But he did a lot of good in this one. He could have easily had a couple goals on those opportunities. He was always involved. His passing percentage was high. He was barely dispossessed, I think only twice that whole match. It was a lot better for him. I think it's just the flavor of the week right now with the hate for him because of the contracts and all this stuff. It's really easy to get on him, but it wasn't that bad. He was not our worst player. We see this game out in a frustrating draw. There was a little sequence at the end there where De Ligt is screaming bloody murder, shouting, and we see the replay, and you see defender grabbing a hold of his kit there. He goes down, tries to draw this call. I'm not sure if they looked at it or anything. Whistle blows. Morata says something in passing. The ref doesn't even hesitate, pulls the red card out. So Morata will miss the Derby della Mola versus Torino. There's talks coming out today that he's possibly going to see a 3-match suspension. I'm not sure what was said. I haven't seen any reports as far as what was said. Then you see Cuadrado, Chiesa, Pinsolio, Dybala, and even Pirlo walk up to the ref, and Dybala's already been talking to him for quite some time. And get your story, hear what his explanation is, and then move away. You could see in this ref's body language, he's done talking, like he was not having any of it. And yet Pirlo even goes through the efforts of going all the way out there, walking up to him, and keeps patting. And De Ligt was the one grabbing Paulo and trying to pull him away and say, like, that's it, like it's over. And to me, I see that, and I'm so frustrated that we can't get the job done against Benevento. I'm even more frustrated that we're giving the ref the gears about Morata being a dipshit and taking a brutal red card. Keep your mouth shut. Like, the frustration's boiling over, but you guys have nobody to blame but yourselves. So it was obviously a very quick explanation that the ref gave Dybala. Pirlo comes out there, and then Pirlo's frustrated, and he's going up. But don't set that precedence. Take your players and go talk to them, because there's no way there should have been that much frustration. And why are we getting a 4th red card? The lack of discipline is also there. And sometimes in moments like these, I can't help but think Pirlo is Pirlo the player and not Pirlo the manager. And I want to see it a little bit differently. And I actually there was nothing wrong with Dybala walking up to the ref and getting the explanation. But you obviously got that very quickly. Wrap it up. And more players are walking up there. Pinsolio, Cuadrado, Chiesa doesn't even leave the ref side there. I had this discussion with someone, whether it's aggressive or respectful, it doesn't really matter. It's the same as lobbying for calls all match, in a match where you're far and above better quality than your opposition, and you guys are just shit in the bed. There's no difference there. Morata made a mistake. He got caught for it. Get over it. Let's move on. Get your explanation from the ref. Should you choose to appeal it, appeal it. But other than that, Leave the guy alone and go figure out your problems because we got bigger fish to fry. That part really pissed me off. But I did like De Ligt getting in there and saying, let's go. Like, you got nobody to blame. That part was frustrating, man. It was frustrating to watch. This whole match was frustrating.
Absolutely. One question I had about that, and I've looked at it a couple of times now, was it something that Morata said before the final whistle, or was it something that was said after the final whistle? Because it's not really clear in terms of like how the match ends. It's basically like the whistle is blown, red card is given, because it's after the final whistle.
Yeah. So what it looked like is the final whistle goes. Morata's walking this way towards the sideline. Was probably and started walking away, and it was like a sharp, like quick turn from the ref. Boom, red card. So to me, it was said at that moment, and at that moment, he dished out the red card. I don't think it was prior to that whistle. It was definitely after. If I had to guess, based on what I was watching on that footage.
Yeah, my only qualm with that would be is why are we dishing out cards if there's not like a brawl after the game is over? Like, yeah, obviously, as Juventus fans, we wanted to win. Juventus players frustrated without getting the win. I mean, unless he said something truly egregious.
Well, that's what
why
I
are
mean.
you dishing out a card after the final whistle is blown?
Well, especially if now it's talking 3-match ban. Like, what was said? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, because it's starting to get a little outrageous here. And if it wasn't Juve involved with this 3-match ban, I could imagine the outrage. You know what I mean? But it's like it's Juve, so we got to just take it. And it's kind of horseshit. But I'd love to know what was said or what happened. But yeah, regardless, in that scenario too, like those guys going up to the ref and stuff, it's like, why risk this guy dishing out another card or whatnot? Like, just get your players, get out of there. And De Ligt had the right idea in terms of let's just go, let's cut it out before it gets worse. But yeah, like I don't really know what happened there. It's
a confusing situation indeed. Like I can't think of probably even a handful of times where after a whistle, whether it be halftime or full time, unless there is some type of like almost Major League Baseball style benches cleared, everybody is on the field type of situation where cards are being doled out.
Well, I've seen it in altercations with, usually it's managers going at the refs post match, and they will get carded. Like, I've seen that. But yeah, I mean, again, it's my frustration is with Morata to even give the ref a reason at that point, right?
And why are you mouthing off to the ref of all people? Like, you've got your goal. Like, well, say it to your teammates. They're the ones who aren't helping you drag it over the line.
Well, for sure, it would have to be. I think the lack of calls. I think they were, especially that De Ligt one. I think they were lobbying very, very hard for at least a look, and probably nothing. It was probably, again, you're sitting at a 1-1 draw with Benevento, and frustration mounted, and it boiled over. And Morata's got a history of letting his temper out. So it's part of the beast within there with that guy. But let's. It just added to the frustration that we were all feeling. Player ratings. We'll go through the list. We'll see where we've got these player ratings, and then we're going to go to a bunch of comments from Twitter and questions that are come out, and this is going to tackle a lot of what you got into at halftime there, which I think is very, 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 very solid topics for the moment where we're at. And there's a lot of questions to be asked of Pirlo's Juve. But player ratings, we'll start with Szczesny in goal. I gave him a 7. What did you give him, Travis?
I gave him a 6.5.
Okay. Quadrado, I had at a 5.
I gave him a 5 as well. I give him a 5.
Yeah, the second half was quite bad when it came to turnovers. Danilo, I gave him a 6, level at 6. All players start at 6. I didn't see anything outrageous, and I didn't see anything bad. It was just standard.
I gave him a 6. I'll give him a 6.5 just on the fact that he's been one of the more consistent members at the back, and he's been trending upwards. I don't think he did anything additionally special, but he has kind of flopped positions back into the center as of late. So I'll give him a little bit extra just for moving around.
Yeah. De Ligt. What did you have De Ligt at?
I gave him an 8.
So did I. I gave him an 8 as well. He was solid again, and he was left hung out to dry with Danilo. He did a fantastic job, though. Frabotta. This one was a weird one. I don't necessarily feel. I gave him like a 5.5, but I feel like it's harsh because I don't think it was a lot of it was his fault. I think it was more the setup and Ramsey being completely free and literally only having Frabotta out on that side. He got dribbled by a few times. He didn't offer a whole lot moving forward. There were some times where he needed to get stuck in, and he didn't. So I just put him under the 6 at 5.5. What did you have him at?
I gave him a 6, and mostly because I felt his performance was undone by who was ahead of him. Yeah. I felt he would have had a stronger performance if, we would have started Chiesa on the left in a more natural, or Bernardeschi even in like a more natural wing position.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I said, I mean, it might be a little harsh on him for that because I think he was a victim of the circumstances.
It's also a very, very young player and just like getting into like the top flight, like was pulled up in the 11th hour. So is really just learning to like play at this level.
Yeah, absolutely. Freddie Church.
I gave him a 7.
Did you give him a 7?
I gave him a 7 just on that pass.
Yeah. Yeah. He did pretty well, all things considered. I think, again, it was an awkwardness in the setup, but I thought Chiesa did very, very well.
I would start docking points from him, though, going forward, if he isn't doing anything defensively, though.
Yeah.
Like, I've been giving him like a little bit of leeway because he's been a really bright spot offensively. But if he's not going to start playing two ways, that's probably going to come down for me.
Yeah. Rabiot.
I gave him a 7. I mean, I think he's really come into his own recently. He looks really solid in the center of the park there. He's just one of those players who doesn't do anything spectacular, but doesn't do anything wrong. Just really, really consistent.
Yeah, I gave him a 7.5. Thought he had a pretty clean game. Just very, very happy with what he's been giving us. Arthur was in the negatives for me. I gave him a 5.
I gave him a 5.5.
Yeah.
Didn't do like enough for me to like justify keeping him at par, but wasn't so terrible that I was so undone by him. But again, I go back to, what I said earlier is like, I just don't see where he fits right now and is being clearly played out of position.
Yeah, I don't know. He's a tough one. I gave him a 5 and almost went lower just because of the sequence before that equalizer. It was just a mess from him. and it needs to be way better. But yeah, he's a tough one to figure out here. So far, out of all his performances, I've liked one solid performance. It was against Cagliari. Like, I thought it was unreal. I thought hopefully this is the turning point for him, where he turns the corner. We start seeing that consistently. He lacks that forward passing, that final pass. He lacks. He's going to be your pivot. He's going to be your go-to in the middle. He's going to move the ball laterally when he controls the tempo properly. It was really, really good. But for the most part, he's always battling holding it on too long, or getting it out too early, or just turnovers when he's trying to go forward with it. So he's a weird one to figure out.
Have you ever noticed how he runs in circles? Because that drives me insane.
When he runs in circles?
Yeah, have you ever noticed that?
Keeping the ball away from players, he'll just do like
in a complete circle. That drives me insane. Just move it on to one player over. Like
yeah. It looks kind of funny for the defender, but
it's like a FIFA thing. Like, I'm just gonna run in a complete circle right here in like a 10-yard radius.
Yeah. Nobody's like his ability on ball and to keep possession is great, but there's got to be way more to it.
He's Ramsey. Ramsey. I gave him a 6. I probably should have docked him more just because Ramsey again out of place, is doing nothing defensively. Left for Bata like completely exposed a number of times. And another one of those players, like when you see what he can do and then you see one of these games, it's just like, what is happening?
I know. He was this one was just an awkward one for Ramsey. What were you going to say about Arthur after I talked about his
I was going to say he is like the prime example of like why he would have been at Barcelona. He like you put him not necessarily in like a Ramsey type of role, but as you said, like can like move it laterally, can keep possession moving. You put him 5-10 yards outside of the box and just let him can like keep the ball under his feet, which is what he excels at, and just continue to move it to try to open up space. Like that to me is where he's best. Like he seems a little lost. And if you could get him into that position, which isn't a box to box position, like it's almost like a variation on a 10.
Yeah.
But again, more players being played not to their strengths.
Yeah. Exactly. Alvaro Morata.
I gave him a 5.5 just because I take discipline pretty seriously. Like the goal was exceptional. He's been on a tear, but that was an extremely foolish red to fucking take. Pardon my French. So you lose points for me because that does damage long term. That's not just like you pissed the bed in like one moment or like didn't score or something like that. Like you had a great goal and then you lost the plot.
Yeah, I had him at docked down to just even because I had him up before that. I thought he was, doing a lot of good things. So I had him up, especially with the goal. Then that red brought him down to just like even for me, like 6, and I was gonna go to a 5 because I was so pissed off about it. And I just think that's absolutely brutal for him to be doing. But I just left it as a 6, as a flat 6. Paulo Dybala.
I gave him a 6.5.
Yeah,
I don't think he did anything exceptional. He looked good on the ball. He's missing confidence. He's missing goals, but he didn't really do anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I gave him a 6 as well. Like just left him even because again, there's nothing like exceptional. It could have been exceptional, but he didn't bury. One of them was a sitter in his standards that he's got to finish. But again, I can't dock anything because he was good on possession. His passing percentage was high. did a lot of good. Yeah, it just wasn't falling for him. So I just left it even. As far as the substitutes, Bentancur, Kulishevsky, and Berna, I had them all straight through as 6. Maybe Kulishevsky a little bit lower. There was just, yeah, really wasn't a whole lot of time anyways, but nobody really did anything crazy. Bernardeschi, maybe a 6.5. He got involved pretty quick, and he seemed to have a bit of urgency about him. I've actually liked what I've seen out of Bernardeschi as of late. Bentancur, yeah, it's fine, 6. And Kulishevsky, maybe could go a little bit lower because I felt he was kind of invisible, but he's also been a player which I think we haven't been able to key in on where he needs to be. But yeah, any thoughts you have on those 3 guys?
I had Bentancur a little bit higher. I put him at a 6.5. Kulusevski at 5.5 as well, and then Bernardeschi at 6. Not Bernardeschi, but Bentancur is the player right now that probably I spend the most time wondering why we aren't using, because he seems like he would be the exact type of player that would fit into this side really well and could be utilized in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he's it's tough. I've felt a couple times watching him that he looks out of place as well. I'm not really sure what the solution is going to be. I honestly, I keep saying I think Pirlo needs to get 3 midfielders in there. No matter what his setup is, I think you need to have 3. If simply just for the stability defensively, you know what I mean? But this 2 pivot thing is getting awkward, and it's getting it's vulnerable. It's getting taken advantage of. So he's gonna have to figure it out. But yeah, Bentancur will be an interesting one to see. He has kind of fallen down a bit in the totem pole, maybe only sitting above McKennie, who again I thought adds quite a bit to our team, but not when he's played as an outside midfielder. So I'm not really sure what Pirlo's thinking there. And then the frustrating part is the substitutions. So, like, this is my one thing with Pirlo is that there's a disconnect between what you get in lineups, what you're seeing on the pitch, and when the substitutes take place. And I can't, again, this goes back to a comment I made earlier where are we getting Pirlo the player or are we getting Pirlo the manager? You know, because sometimes I feel like his subs are so delayed that I can't help but think he's thinking about it as the player. And like, oh man, he doesn't want to go out yet, or he doesn't want to go yet. You can't worry about that. And sometimes you got to forget a player's feelings. If he's going to be pissed, he's going to be pissed, but you got to make the right call for your team on the pitch, and you have the power to influence the change and what's going to take place. And I can't help but feel sometimes we've got Pirlo the player and not the manager, you know, and this goes back, like, it's great that players are happy now. You know, Sarri's gone. They've got Pirlo. They all respect Pirlo. It's great that they're happy, but Jesus Christ, if you're not winning on the pitch, I don't really care that you're happy.
Well, I wonder that at a different level, and I wonder that in the locker room, which is how much of it is he spending being kind of in that same morale mode as a player on the training ground or in the locker room, and not really being as resolute as he might need to be from a managerial perspective. You know, because there's one thing to be said about, they're just not grasping the concept. There's another thing to be said about, like, are you cracking the whip? Because he was just here as a player, and a lot of these guys he has played with. So how much of it is him being just the guy who's back and is now in charge, and perhaps isn't really flexing that muscle, maybe because he doesn't want to be disliked, maybe because, I mean, hard to believe about himself, like unsure about like what that might do to his relationship with the players if he were to be more stern.
Yeah. It's funny too because it's almost like deja vu, man. Like you get Sarri in, he says all the right things. He shows you some glimpses early on, but then it just fades. Pirlo's kind of going through the same thing right now. He said all the right things when he came along. We saw some of the things that got excited, and something's changed. But for me, it's like, where's that fight and that attitude that he wanted to bring back? Where he said it's the mentality, it's the attitude, it's that fight. Well, man, when have we even seen that this year? This team to me looks so fragile. We go a goal down, and we're actually concerned whether or not we could find a goal.
Right.
And that's just weak. And it's like, I want a team that if they allow a goal, it's not this sulking and pissing and moaning that you see. Grab that ball, hit center, and go get it back. Like fight. But we just look so damn soft. Robin D writes it because we got a bunch of comments after this one. Because as we mentioned earlier, like Juventus were just it was a shit show on social media. But Robin D writes in, the job is too big for Pirlo. The gamble is failing. It's not all Pirlo's fault, but you have to win these games. We got into it. I got into a discussion with the Juventino today, actually, and said we were talking about this, and I just thought, there's a number of reasons Pirlo probably brought in. Financial was probably a huge portion of it. We paid Allegri, during his sabbatical. We still have to pay Sarri and whatnot. If this team wanted to bring in, say, Pochettino, Ronaldo, I don't think they had the funds to do it. So I think Pirlo literally, like the biggest thing, number one, he was part of this club. So management's probably thinking, you know what? He's a rookie manager, but he was part of a club. He's one of our legends. Like, yeah, let's go with Pirlo. Pay him 1 point whatever, 6 million, which is great for them financially. And probably think that the fans would be okay if the expectations aren't quite there for Champions League or whatnot because, it's a rookie manager or whatnot. Like, I think there's a lot that plays into this. Even COVID, even the pandemic itself and the financial burdens. But what are your thoughts on the job being too big for Pirlo? Yeah.
I've actually been thinking about this most of the day, kind of tossing it back and forth. And this seems to me like kind of a repeat of Clarence Seedorf at Milan. And the reason I say that is you're bringing back a club legend. You're bringing back somebody with no experience. And the difference is Milan was really, really struggling at that point. So if he succeeded, it was a masterstroke. If he failed, you could say he's brand new, and so on and so forth. And on the opposite side of the coin for Juventus, you can say those same things. If he fails, like he's brand new, no experience. If he's extremely successful, it's a masterstroke. And I think we're in a really strange position right now after winning 9 in a row, where you start to wonder, where is the motivation on field? And like, how do you get that out of people? And at some level, I hate to say this, but like objectively speaking, you may need somebody who can be in a way like a fall guy, who doesn't have a ton of experience, who you can say, we rolled the dice, we took a big gamble, it didn't work out. That's okay. We took a big risk. But at the same side, at the same time, you're expected to win at Juve. So I think, is it too big for him? I mean, you put anybody with no experience in a club like Juventus, it's a tall order. Is the gamble failing? I would say it's probably a little bit premature to say that, strictly because he's unbeaten. We're 5 points off pace. We have the deepest team. Most teams trip and fall on their face in the second half of the season, and that's where we kind of overtake them. We've seen that in the last few years, especially with like Lazio, when they really pushed us and they really capitulated in the second half of the season, or even Inter last year when they pushed us and dropped points almost at the very end, or we even dropped points at the very, very end and they kind of caught up to us. But I think it kind of remains to be seen. But I think this decision was made in the event that we do capitulate, that we do not win, so they can put the onus on him and say, no experience, we took a big risk, it didn't pay off.
Yeah, I actually I touched on that really well, probably really early into his tenure, thinking, and I actually said that I hope he's not just like the fall guy, that they kind of saw the way their business moves were leading this club. And I hope that they didn't just do this so that we would all accept it because he's new. I really, really hope the club wouldn't do that to Pirlo and but man, you just really, really can't rule it out. It'll be interesting to see. And carrying on with the topics here, that comments that came in after this match, Abdul Rahman writes in, what's Pirlo missing? So you're asking this from a personnel standpoint. I think the biggest thing for this team right now is there is still a lack of creativity in the middle of the park. We still don't have that player that'll just pick out a forward run, or like, those guys in the middle are not doing that. It's not coming from those guys. It's weird. It's really weird. I think a lot of people anticipated Arthur was going to be that guy, and he's clearly not. If he will turn into that, great. But we don't have that creative force in the middle of the park. Ramsey is the only one that could be argued to do that. However, he's having an issue with balance and where it's really going to work in the system. I still think it's a huge reason why not only Paulo Dybala, but Cristiano Ronaldo as well wander all over the pitch, because there is a severe lack of creativity out of the middle of the park for this club. And it's been like that for quite some time. But yeah, I think we're missing that creativity, that driving force out of the middle, and I think we need a right back. We needed a right back for sure. We could have pushed Cuadrado up, which would have actually probably helped us, based on how he can connect with Morata, and they've got a good chemistry going. But we know Cuadrado's shortcomings are at the back, so I think for me, those two things are missing. But I think a lot of what Pirlo is missing is actually has to do with himself, really. I think he's got to stop being the ex-teammate and start being that manager. And he's got to start going with what's working, but he's got to allow the momentum to be built. He talked about it himself. He said the experiment, we're past that phase now. And then the following two matches, What do we get? We get experiments. And they fail, they're not working, and he's so late to pull the trigger on changes. He has really got to get in touch with the substitutes and his lineups and where he's playing these players. He's hurting himself, I think, more than what's missing on the pitch as far as the personnel, because we are improved as far as personnel goes, in my personal opinion. Again, some people are already, they're going at Kulishevsky, they're going at Chiesa. Why do we bring these guys in? I have no problem with us bringing these players in. What I do have a problem with is watching them have to be played in a position that they didn't come to us in. That's the part that frustrates me the most. What are your thoughts on this, Travis?
Yeah, I think like as far as personnel goes, I think that could go, one of two ways. And I think that's really how you want to look at how you're sending the team out. You could stand to do with like a true playmaker in the center of the park if you're going to play a 4-3-3, because that's obviously lacking. Or you could also look at from like a 4-4-2 perspective. If we're going to play two at the top and go and get yourself an out-and-out winger as well. Especially because now we have Sandro coming back, which I thought this would have been a great game to give him an hour. Put Danilo on the left and start like Demiral, De Ligt in the middle. Put a more solidified back line there. You have, even play Kulusevski, on the right, Chiesa on the left. I think it kind of goes in that direction. I think at this point, to kind of go with, to echo what you said, I think he's really got to start putting himself in that authoritarian kind of position and saying, this is how it is. And almost to the point where you're not giving out as many chances. Like if you blow it on the field, you got to earn your spot back. But I think we also need, and we talked about this really briefly beforehand, how it's kind of, ironic how we used to beg for rotation and now we have too much of it. I think we need some consistency because the best sides in the world, and when you think about, like the Bayerns or like the Decima, Madrid and things like that, these are squads that had almost no turnover, where the same, 70-80% of the guys played together day in, day out for years. Not who is going to be playing to my left, who's going to be playing to my right, week in, week out. And I think some solidity in that department would do him well. I think, and maybe perhaps just take the handbrake off and just send him out to win. If we're not gonna stop him from scoring, we have plenty of players out there who can put it together in the attacking third. Just send them out there and let them try to run it up, try to score 3-4 goals, and hope you come out on the top end of that.
Yeah, when we get to talking about before and like us always begging for the rotation and whatnot, I think it was a little bit different because what we wanted was guys to not just have guaranteed spots. You wanted competition for those spots. So the part that's frustrating with Pirlo is that, he's not allowing the hot hands to just go. And this whole Dybala thing, when you talk about Dybala, I said it not last episode, I think the one before, but I've said recently, he needs to earn his spot back through a substitute role. He can't be trusted in the form that he's in. So doing these things and getting this guy started, and I totally understand the common thought the logical reasoning would be it's Benevento. You play Dybala from the start. You probably bag one, because of who the competition is. Pick him up, pick himself up, and you can start moving forward. But in the same regard, it's also the worst run I've probably ever seen Paulo in. And as a manager, you're going to be in tune with what's happening behind the scenes, and I would, I, I'm not going to believe that he's not talking to Paulo on a consistent basis and be like, man, he's got to have an understanding of where his player is mentally right now in this spot.
Right.
If we are talking about a situation, which I could understand, say, the club wanted to push Paulo Dybala out. They wanted to sell him. Okay. Paulo Dybala fought to stay. He was the one that shut the deals down from happening because he wanted to stay with Juve. He then puts in a fantastic season, and then doesn't get rewarded with a contract. So us, your average guys in the workplace, if you're feeling undervalued, if you feel like you haven't been rewarded properly, yeah, it's going to weigh on you. It's going to take a toll. It's going to cause some added stress. It's going to affect you. It would affect me at my workplace if I felt like, hey, you know what? I think I deserve better than what you're getting. It's going to mess with you. But if this is what's happening, Pirlo's got to understand where this guy's at and that trust level and where it is. So all of a sudden, he's in a position where, why is he getting all these starts if he's just not there? He needs to, and this has happened to Paulo before, and he's had to earn his way back through the substitute role, and it is what it is. Guys that are the hot hands need to be played, and that level of competition, it needs to get there, because that's how you're going to correct Dybala. Forcing him starts, if his head's not right there, is just going to hurt the team. It's probably going to have a negative impact on Paulo if it doesn't go well, which is what we've been seeing. And it's going to hurt the team too, because you're possibly dropping points because you don't have your best 11 or the right 11 from the get-go. So Pirlo's really got to start getting in touch with this and getting the calls right. But I said it for a while now. Dybala's got to earn it from the substitute role. Alexandro just coming back from injury. Same thing for me with how Danilo was playing in that setup and everything like that. Sandro's got to work his way into the fold. He should just be guaranteed a spot because of the name on the back of the kit, right? So I think it's that happy balance of not just rotating for the sake of rotating, but actually getting the guys that need to be rewarded for their performances in there. The only issue right now is that in most matches, we have half of the lineup that looks out of place or just playing poorly. And for this, it's got to be Pirlo and the setup, and he's just got to find something that's better suited to the team as a whole. That's really all I could sum up for what I'm really feeling and seeing right now. Is just, it's a lot of rotation, it's a lot of tinkering at positions that I feel is unnecessary. And I think what Pirlo's missing, it's not necessarily missing. I think he's hurting himself and the team's growth based on his belief in this fluidity and system that he wants to try and achieve. It's funny because in his thesis too, and just him in interviews and whatnot, he's said, you don't believe in a set formation. You build something based on your players. But I really, really struggle to link that with the setup we're using with our players. And for me, that's on him and nobody else, What do you think?
The one comment I would probably like make to that, and this is mostly just to play like the devil's advocate more than anything, is like you're coming off a midweek tie in the Champions League. You guarantee yourself progression. You've Benevento at the weekend. This, to me, if I was a manager, would be the match to rotate, because you would presume, even if I'm Pirlo, if I'm sending out, my last choice in every position, that they can get it over the line against this team. Like, because I would want to, maybe look ahead and see, is it worth risking the fitness of this, person, because we have, X team ahead, and especially playing Champions League weekly at this point, rather than every couple of weeks and things like that. This is one of those matches where it makes sense, in my opinion, to roll the dice. But you still, if you're rolling the dice in a formation sense, because you believe that you have the quality in depth to beat a side like Benevento after, a midweek tie, that they will get it over the line for you, because that's where a championship is won and lost. So I'll give him a little bit of slack there, because I definitely agree with you. Like, whomever is playing hot at the time should be starting in those big matches. But this is also one of those matches where somebody who is, a Bernadeschi, for example, somebody who's trying to earn their way back into the side, could have like a spark of brilliance and maybe show something, maybe earn a few more minutes. Somebody like Sandro, who's just coming back from a lengthy injury, gets a few minutes, like starting, kind of gets the wheels back under them, and you can kind of tinker in that way. But beyond that, I am 100% in agreement with you. If you're gonna tinker, it's got to be against a side where, on paper, going into it, it looks like an absolute no-brainer that you're going to blow the wheels out from under them.
Yeah. The frustration lies in the fact that, okay, you're going to make your rotations. That's fine. It's Benevento. But, again, sticks out like a sore thumb. What's happening with Ramsey on this outside? Is that going to end up being a 4-3-1-2? If it is a 4-3-1-2, are you using Chiesa as one of the midfielders? So it's like he's battling here. It's like it's never quite making sense. Even if you're going to get rotations in, let it make sense for the personnel.
Absolutely.
You go through the first half of this match completely susceptible to counterattacks, and you left Danilo and De Ligt hanging dry. We come out at the half, zero changes. Zero changes in the system, zero changes in how we play, zero changes in personnel, and we allowed them counterattacks again, and they look dangerous, and nothing changed. It's frustrating.
Absolutely.
I totally understand that people are fine with Pirlo and they say give him time, and these issues have been there with Juve for a while now. He's not going to come in and fix them immediately. At the same time, he's making some mistakes, and he does need to be better on his end.
And that's a good point, because that also begs the question, because that's a good point. Like, you're being beaten on the counter over and over. Is that too much confidence, being a little too headstrong in yourself and how you sent them out? Or is that too much naivety in being a new manager and not being able to see that soon enough and making the change soon enough? And that's something at, 10 games across all competitions, he's probably still getting some grasp on. So do I think it'll improve? Yeah, but yeah, it is frustrating. It is frustrating. And as intelligent as he is, as we all, perceive him to be, as not only a player, but as a person, you have to think at some point it starts to kind of like turn over in the other direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, time's gonna tell, and I mean, the question's being asked of Pirlo. I mean, this is how crazy it was. It's already Pirlo out. That you can see from certain Juventus that get very, very reactionary. I'm nowhere near that, but I think there are some fair criticisms of him
Absolutely.
so far. But it got to the point where things were so crazy that our Arun Aslesh actually said, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Allegri back. I did a poll for fun to see how many Juventini would actually say bring Allegri back. 56% voted yes, and 44% voted no. For me, it would be a no. Just because you obviously wanted to make a change for whatever reason. Give it time, actually commit to it, before actually saying, no, it's not going to happen. But I also don't believe we should go back because I think the time was right and it was right for both parties. And I think I think that's it. If we move forward, I think it's with a new manager. But right now, it's way too early to shut down Pirlo and shut it down. It's literally his first coaching gig, and it's Juve, and it's like 10 matches in.
Across all competitions.
What's that?
Across all competitions too.
Yeah. So let's pump the brakes. Let's have a little faith. Yeah, again, I totally understand the criticisms of Pirlo. I think they're fair, but it's very, very early. Very, very early on. Miran Abel Fadi writes in, we talked about Dybala earlier, especially at halftime, and you raised the question, what is going on with Dybala? Miran writes in, can you see Dybala as a Juve captain long term? He's got a second question too, but we'll cover the first one here. If it's the Dybala of last season, absolutely. I could see it. If it's this Dybala, I can't. Like, this Dybala is a mess. What's wrong with him? We talked about it. Speculation. It's all speculation, of course, but most likely the contract. I personally feel he knows his time with Juve is done. There's no way it takes this long for a contract extension. He was not rewarded. He feels hard done by. I think his heart's no longer with it. Travis, I'll let you tackle that question.
All right. Well, I want to say on the last question with Allegri back, I would take him back, but it's never going to happen, and that's. I'll just leave it at that.
You would take him back, yeah. So say January comes, we get rid of Pirlo, you're for Allegri back.
How are you not going to take the most winning manager in the club's history back?
I know. It's just I look back.
I know it's difficult, like, to stomach with the type of manager he is, how things ended. Would I take him back? I mean, would you take the same results back? Is what I would say to most people. It's never going to happen though, so it's not even worth talking about. But
the tough thing is that even during we saw it last year with Sarri. We saw it with Allegri's last season of his tenure. There's matches when it's bad, we don't even get an attempt on target in like the 60th, 70th minute. At least now we're at least getting opportunities. Like, it's not, I don't feel like it's, oh my God, we're so bad. Like, in that regard, I feel like right now it's almost like a puzzle that's just got pieces in the wrong setup. I think like he's kind of.
I was a big Allegri fan though. I like Allegri a lot, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I liked Allegri too, but I kind of lost my I don't know, man. I lost the allure of
I would
Allegri
take him,
after
but
probably part of
it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of what like managerial positions are based on, like nowadays, is Pep Guardiola's like whole like thing about like 3 years is as far as a manager can go with a team before his players stop listening to him, which I don't want to like get into this in a big way because I want to answer this question, but I think potentially a part of Pirlo being here what is Guardiola is going into, fourth, fifth season at City. You take somebody for a year. Guardiola's never coached in Italy. He is the man who talks about like 3 years, maybe 4 years is the max you're going to get out of a club. You go after Guardiola next year, no matter what, give him a new challenge. So it could be also like something to do with that. But I don't want to get into that too much because that's like not the question, obviously, but that's been something that's like percolating in my mind as well. Just something maybe for the listeners to think about. Like maybe there is like a sequence thing they can see long term. Maybe you can get like a Guardiola, something like that. But to answer this question, I could see Dybala as Juve captain. I think what happened though, and I think this has been a big breakdown in Dybala as a player, is before Ronaldo came, Juve management set him up to be, and I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, the new Del Piero, the focal point of the project, who's going to be the marketing guy, who the side's going to be built around, who is going to be the face of Juventus for the foreseeable future. Then you fast forward a year, maybe even 2 years after that, you bring in Ronaldo, which from a marketing standpoint, from a money standpoint, because that's obviously the way Juventus is going, you bring him in. How does Dybala now fit that mold? And on field, how do you play like those two together and expect there to be like a synergy between two players who would be theoretically fighting for the glory on field? And then from like, it really just unravels from there. And as far as like something that you mentioned, if I'm Dybala in this scenario, I've gone a couple of years now where after all of this has been said, I have played second fiddle in a lot of places. I have been put on the bench. I have, had to earn my way back into it. I haven't been the focal point and so on and so forth, that I may feel like hard done by. I may feel like I have been misled and maybe my heart just isn't there anymore. So could I see him as a captain? Yeah, perhaps if like everything worked itself out sequentially perfectly, but that's not the game of modern football. It's a business as much as it is a sport, and when you make massive moves like that, there's going to be some hiccups. And then when you're fighting against a Cristiano Ronaldo and you're getting the comparisons of as a left-footed Argentinian as theoretically being like a new Messi, and you're not even shining alongside him in like the international squad, you're having health issues, you're not playing consistently, like where does that leave you? So could he? Yes. Really, really hard to see right now.
Oh yeah, right now it's next to impossible to see. But time will tell what happens with Paulito there. In your opinion, what salary should a bench rotation player make? In general, not for a specific player. That's I think with that one, it's really going to come down to I don't know. That's a tough one, man. I mean,
There's too many variables to answer that. Like, who is the player?
yeah,
Like,
because
how deep in the depth are we talking? Because, like, Sami Khedira is a great example of this. Like, how and against Daniele Rugani would be a great contrast to this. Sami Khedira, World Cup winner, Champions League winner, world-class talent in the twilight of his career. To even get him to come to the club, you're going to have to give him a reasonable amount of money. Daniele Rugani, young player, rotational player, except for when he was at Empoli, rising star. It's not going to take him nearly as much money to entice him because he's going to want to prove himself. So it would be, if all things were equal, like, you could answer that question fairly, but you can't.
yeah, it's way too difficult because I mean, you've got a guy like Matthias de Ligt right now who's on 7.5, which is like a steal for that talent. He won't be at 7.5 his career for sure. But then again, we were handing out extensions to guys that were making, they're on the opposite end. Then you bring in a couple freebies like Ramsey and Rabiot that get high wage. They're around 7. And Ramsey's got his fitness issues and whatnot. And it's hard. It makes you think like, oh, should we have given him that money? Is he worth that money? There's a lot of variables in here to really answer. I mean, but he's wanting to know like a cap on a bench rotation player. It really depends on who the player is. If we're stacking our bench with world class talent that's on the verge of starting, well then yeah, they're gonna want more money and they'll be worth more money. But that's the difference of having a bench where you pretty much your options are what you field, or you have the bench of like Real Madrid when they were loaded there, where each one's better than the next.
Yeah, and I mean, even like when you look at like a club like Juventus over the past few years, right? Let's say you bring in a player like a Rabiot, right? A young talent who's coming in on a free, who you could give more money to entice them in, more upside. There's no transfer fee. There's no amortization value. You can sell him off and still profit off them if he does well. But then you look at like a few years ago when you buy somebody, like Tomas Rincon in January to be specifically a squad player because you need reinforcements. We took him on loan for next to nothing. And the guy has been playing at the top, like at the top level, maybe not for the top teams, but in top flights for 10 plus years. Like, how do you quantify the equality, or even like in like a perfect world, all things equal, offer them the same salary? It's an impossible question to answer. There's too many moving parts. That would be like saying, if you could have Messi or Ronaldo, who would you take? Like, you could argue that till the sun comes down.
Yeah, we leave that one for both of their fanboys there. They do that on the daily.
Right. No kidding.
Yeah. Last, certainly not least, a comment that came in, Rick Cibrian. We are not winning anything this year. That's after the Benevento draw 1-1. And I'm not there as of yet. It's way too early. We're 6 points off Milan, who continues to win, and credit where credit's due. Ibra's out again, and Milan continues to win. I'm still waiting for a drop off there. I don't know. I still feel like I said, I just feel like this team is just got the pieces in the wrong order. Um, it, we're not far away. I don't think we're far away. It feels like that sometimes, and it looks like that sometimes. But when it's been good, it's been drastically better than what we saw last season. So we just haven't seen it enough, and nowhere near the consistency we need to be at. But I'm going to have a little faith. It's 9 matches in Serie A. We're qualified for the knockouts of Champions League. Let's hope to continue to build. Let's hope that we get these guys back fit and healthy, the key guys, and hope Pirlo fine tunes his methods and adjustments and get going. I'm still going to have faith, though, that we at least, at the very least, can bring home that 10th straight. But Travis, your closing thoughts on this comment from Rick and where you're at with this club right now?
I would say I think we just need a little confidence, a little consistency, and things will kind of turn themselves around. The results haven't been exactly what we've wanted. Again, I would be remiss to not mention that once again, this is an extremely peculiar year for the game itself. But I think what will probably carry us through, if nothing else, is depth. Because you look at a Milan, who is sitting top right now. I don't see them having the depth to be able to carry all the way through. And as an example, we touched on before, Lazio a year or two ago, fighting us tooth and nail, lost a couple players, all of a sudden, tailspin out of control, went completely the opposite direction. I think at some point, all of these teams that were really like up in the mix with are going to have like a downturn in form. Again, no losses yet this year. It's not like we're posting, 3-4 losses and a few wins and we're still there. It's, 4 or 5 draws now, 4 wins. So still undefeated. Just, tighten up the screws, get a little bit consistency, get a little positivity back in the squad, get a couple more victories, wait for, the clubs that you're racing with to stumble and capitalize on your chances like we didn't this weekend.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's a tough. The whole thing's tough. There's just so many elements right now with Juve. I mean, this one made me laugh because Lewis literally put in his comment, "What the fuck is going on with this club?" LOL. There's just so much with this club right now. It's everything. It's absolutely everything when you look at this team. Like, you've got a rookie coach. Okay, you've got a rookie manager. You have a team that got a hell of a lot younger. You have a lot of young guys that haven't been in this scenario before. Okay, haven't been part of a team with such high expectations annually. And probably the demands a lot higher from the clubs that they were at previously. Not to mention the scrutiny that comes along with being a Juve player and what's expected of you day in, day out. Then you get to this flux, this kind of transition in leadership on the pitch where we're currently at. Chiellini is our captain, but his body is not where it needs to be anymore. And I think, sadly, he's going to have a lesser role for the remainder of the season. Bonucci is Bonucci. He's unfortunately was struggling big time defensively. But he's the vice. And yeah, it's just there's so many elements right now with this Juve team. You throw in all these factors I just brought up, and then you Put on top of that, trying to learn a new system, trying to figure something out that, and it's not only a new system, it's a system that's changed, that we've seen different elements to almost on a week to week basis. And we haven't even mastered one of them. So like it's really hard right now. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving pieces. A lot of people think it's just time to keep it simple, and Pirlo just needs to simplify things. Maybe just pull back a bit on where he's trying to go or ease it up. I don't know. I'm kind of with you along the lines of what we were saying earlier, which is line the guys up, put them in their natural positions, and just fire away. Let them go. Because, it feels like something that Juve's done for a while, which is just pick these players up almost as market opportunities and try to change them from what they came to us as. And it's very, very frustrating as a fan to watch that and to happen numerous times with numerous players and not get like the potential that's there, or see these players just not reach that potential. It's frustrating. It's a frustrating thing. But that was the last one I want to touch on. And Travis, any thoughts on what I just finished off with?
I mean, the only thing that I would add to that is I think as fans of this club, and I've said this on every podcast I've been on and almost everything I've written, is most of us need to be a little bit softer on the trigger when it comes to these really hot takes about things so quickly. And I think a component of it is because we've been bred to win. And like the phrase I use all the time is we've been spoiled rotten with victory. We are at a point where we win ad nauseum. And when that isn't happening, we go running in whatever direction we think is going to make the immediate change to get us to where we want to be. So I think a little bit more patience, a little bit less trigger happy on things like that, and just let it happen. Every single year for the past 5-6 years, I can probably think of being at this time of the year and somebody is saying, this person out, we need to do this, we need to get rid of this person, we need to sign this person. Yet every year we win the Scudetto. Every year we're making it into the knockouts of the Champions League. Like, it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things. We keep winning. Just takes a little bit of time. You can't, we're not we're owned by the company that owns Ferrari, but we're not driving a Ferrari. We're not going to hit the gas and be at 100 kilometers an hour in 1.5 seconds. It's going to take a little bit of time. The season is a marathon. We're competing on multiple fronts in a very peculiar time with different schedules and things like that. Let's see what happens when it gets to be a little later, and just give it a little time, give it a little patience. A lot of new players, a lot of new faces, people learning to play with each other, new manager. Let's not jump the gun too quickly.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's tough. I mean, it's hard to say. It's just being spoiled rotten with victory, whatnot. I could see that, whatnot. I think it seems just natural now that it's always a blame game. It's just
100%.
right away. It's just that, and I mentioned it earlier, which is like a flavor of the week. Yeah, you've got your list of names, and these are the guys that they will just find a way that this is the blame game. But you're absolutely right. What we touched on, there's a lot of factors at play here. It's going to take some time. It is frustrating. I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know if we're going to end up winning anything this year, but it's out of our hands. The only thing we can do as supporters is have some faith, hope that the team corrects the issues. But I don't know. I think the guys that are around, that are on this club, if we could get Chiellini back and he could stay somewhat healthy, hopefully Bellucci could turn it around defensively. But Demiral's promising. He should be back from injury pretty quick. I think the guys have enough pride in there. I think Pirlo. I think he'll figure out his wrongs. I think he's a very, very intelligent guy. I think he'll start turning a corner too. I just hope it's not too late, because while we're saying all this and the patient stuff, we can't keep dropping points and dropping points like this to Benevento. So we'll see what happens. We've got a midweek match against Dinamo Kiev in the Champions League. I'll be coming at you guys with another podcast after that one. And hopefully we got a victory, and then that'll come down to us and Barca for tops in the group. So, yeah, look forward to that one. We'll see what's happening. We'll see if Cristiano's going to be in the lineup, knowing that now he's dealing with a knock. I fully anticipate him being in there. But, yeah, just so many storylines to keep track of with this team right now in this season. Crazy, crazy transitional year. COVID's throwing shit for a loop too, and yeah, it's an interesting one. Travis, super late here. Thank you so much for doing this again. Yep. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
And thanks everyone for doing it again. And we'll talk to you after the Champions League match midweek. As always, Forza Juve, fino alla fine. Ciao.